Welcome to Healing Generations, a podcast creating a dialogue uplifting the importance of healing, strengthening, and supporting our communities, and that addresses the disparities and inequities in communities of color. Healing Generations is brought to you by the Healing Generations Institute, a collaborative initiative of the National Compadres Network and the Brotherhood of Elders. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on our new releases.
Welcome everyone. This is Jerry Teo with the Healing Generations podcast, and we want to welcome you here today again. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for choosing to spend time with us today as we continue on this journey that we really intend and hope to bring the light of our teachings, our medicine, the ancestors' ways, and all that we've learned in our life to really help this next generation, but at the same time, to address the many struggles and challenges that we have in a good way, in a loving way, in a way with dignity, respect, love, and trust. And so we want to thank you. Thank you for spending the time with us today. And as we do always, we begin by just thanking Creator and the ancestors. And we want to do that in a good way, honoring all people's ways of acknowledging that greater source. And as we do that, we acknowledge all of you and your ancestors. So you take a moment, just take a deep breath and arrive, and so that you can be present to listen. But it's important for us to acknowledge all those that have come before, that have sacrificed, that have tried to do their best to feed into us, to breathe into us, to love into us in whatever way. And at the same time, recognizing the challenges they've gone through and maybe the struggles that they have passed on to us, that we're here to attempt to resolve and heal in a good way. As we do that, I want to acknowledge the land that I'm on, and you can do the same. I'm on the Tongva Gabrielino land here. Acknowledge those relatives there, and acknowledge the sense of asking for permission to be on that land. But also, as we do that, let's acknowledge the communities and barrios that we live in, the neighborhoods, all the people that are connected to us that make part of our kind of a global community family, including the perritos, the dogs, the cats, the birds, all the trees, and all those things that are part of our environment. And then we come down to our own, blood-related and love-related families, that bring us so much joy sometimes, but also bring us the very same mirror of challenges that we face every day. So I want to bring love and healing and protection and all that is good to our families as well. And as we take this final breath, just acknowledge ourselves. I'm going to acknowledge all of you for being willing to sit here and listen and be willing to really address the important things that are really going to help the next generation. Because our goal is that the next generation of children will have more blessings and less struggles that way. And in doing that, I'm really grateful and feel so honored to have with us today. Consider a compadre, a brother, really an elder, a role model to many in his lifelong work as an attorney, as a judge, but really as an hombre noble, a really noble man that I've come to learn actually through my brother, who first introduced me to Robert Tafoya. And he's so graciously agreed to be on with us today and to share, some of his life experiences and his journey. And so, Robert, I just want to thank you so much for being willing to join us today and allow you to greet the folks that are listening.
Thank you, Jerry. And I'm humbled to be invited to participate in this discussion. And, this is part of the work that starts in the circle. And I'm just here to share life lessons, hoping that what I say can be utilized by others to lessen their loads and to find some direction in their life. So I'm at your service.
Thank you so much. Let's begin and just talk. Maybe we can share a little bit of just about you and your life. Where were you born? Where's your family from? And tell us about your life, brother. Yeah.
My father's name is Fred Martinez Tafoya, who was born in Moore Park, California. My mother, Carolina Ordóñez, was born in Oxnard. I was born in Oxnard. My father's father, Redesel Bustillos Tafoya, was from Clifton, Arizona. My maternal grandmother is Pauline Martinez from Prescott, Arizona. My father's father's father, his grandfather would have been Rosalio Tafoya, and his grandmother would have been Guadalupe Lopez Bustillos from Clifton, Arizona. My mother's father is Abelardo Ordóñez, and he was married to my grandma, Manuela Chavez, from Pedernales, Chihuahua. I'm the fourth oldest in a family of 11 children. And I graduated from Ventura High School in 1969. I earned an Associate of Arts degree from Ventura Community College in 1971. While I was in my senior year of high school, my father took me and my brother and a cousin to Mexico. And that was the very first time I had ever visited Mexico. I was 17. We drove all the way from Ventura all the way to Acapulco and back. And it was there that was a life-changing experience for me. After I completed my Associate of Arts degree, I received scholarship offers to many colleges in the United States, but I decided to return to Mexico. So I attended the University of the Americas in Puebla. And I lived in a little town in Cholula for 3 months and then in Puebla for 9 months. And I was studying economics and history. Then I took some time off after returning to the United States, and I just needed a break from school. And then one day, one of the blessings, a gentleman by the name of Ray Reyes, who was my professor from the community college, asked me what I was doing. I told him, I'm working at a bakery. He says, no, time to get back to school. So he got me into the Teachers Corps program, and I ended up going to Cal State University in Sacramento, where I ended up earning my bachelor's degree in economics and history. And then I earned my master's in education through USC on the Cal State Sacramento campus. And it's there that I met Jose Montoya and the Royal Chicano Air Force and all those crazies. Then from there, I ended up going to Hastings College of Law in San Francisco. And again, another blessing. I was getting ready to go teach another year up in Sacramento. And I'm walking through a parking lot during the summer months of Sacramento, and a friend of mine, Sam Rios, who was the professor at Cal State University, Sacramento, he had the Chicano Studies program. He asked me whether I would be interested in attending a law school admissions test prep course for third world students. I said, what's that? And he sort of explained it. He said, well, come on, I'll take you. And I said, well, I don't have any money. I said, no, don't worry about it. I'll treat you. So I didn't have a toothbrush, nothing. I just jumped in the van and we went to San Francisco. So I participated in this test on the Saturday, but the Saturday night, I spent the night with a bunch of Latino law students. They're sitting around and they're reading books and eating pizza and drinking beer and watching the 49ers on TV. So I asked them, what are you guys doing? They said, well, we're law students. I said, this is what law students do? And I go, yeah. So I applied to Hastings College of the Law and I was accepted. After 3 years, and I worked doing student work there at the law school with some friends, Roberto Teresa de la Rosa, Raul Ayala, Marista de Anda. And at the end of my third year, we incorporated a nonprofit organization called Organization for the Legal Advancement of Raza, Inc. And the idea was to serve the Spanish-speaking communities in the state of California. So we submitted a proposal to Legal Services Corporation in Washington, D.C. They asked us to conduct a needs assessment survey to determine an area in need of Spanish-speaking lawyers, and it was determined that the San Joaquin Valley was the place to go. So after I graduated from law school, I left San Francisco and came to Bakersfield. And I relocated to Bakersfield from San Francisco in 1978. My wife, Sandra, came a year later. I had met Sandra in law school. We graduated together. She came down a year later. She says, okay, we'll be here for 2 years. And that was, 47 years ago. And we're still here. So after I arrived, 2 years after I arrived, I married my wife, Sandra Serrano, a lawyer who decided to use her legal education in education. So she ended up working at Cal State University, Bakersfield, while I practiced law. And then she went on to become the president of Bakersfield College and the chancellor of the Kern Community College District. We have 2 children. Galen, who is now 49, he was my wife's son from her first marriage, but he's my son. And I have all the receipts to show him. So, and then my daughter, Christina, is 44. She'll be 44 in a few weeks. So when I arrived here, I was with Ola Raza for a number of years. Then I became a public defender. And then after being a public defender, I entered private practice. And I was in private practice for 21 years. I became a certified specialist in family law. And then in 2002, I was appointed to the bench. And I became a judge, and I sat as a judge in Kern County for 18 and a half years before I stepped down. But that's it in a nutshell. That's
wow. What a journey, man. And you know, I wonder being able to accomplish that much, and it seems like, you know, you had some ganas, something that pushed you, that moved you, that made you believe that you could do something, but also a tremendous amount of will and intelligence. So thinking back, you know, where'd you get that from? I mean, what did your parents or somebody in your familia, or how did you get that sense of who you were and what you could be, and that orgullo, the pride and wanting to help others, and, you know, what in your family taught you those things, or you know, gave you that?
Well, it starts with family. And when we talk about blessings, I mean, I hit the lotto, 73 years ago, when I was born into a household with a mother and father who were there for me throughout my entire life. I had a mother who, more than anything, focused on the importance of having a spiritual base. She maintained the altar throughout our life. We pray the rosary every day, whether we liked it or not. Jerry, I recall times when, again, there were 11 of us, 8 boys, 3 girls. We all love sports. So we'd be sitting there watching a Dodger game, 9th inning, 2 outs, tie game, bases loaded. My mom walks in the door. She turns off the television, and she says, "On your knees. It's time for the rosary." I go, wait, Mom, wait. No. Just 5 more minutes. On your knees. There wasn't a negotiating. And she went to Mass every day. We prayed rosaries every day. But she emphasized the importance of maintaining a relationship with our Creator. Very, very religious woman, and I learned the notion that it's important to have a spiritual foundation. From my father, he taught us to work. Again, when he was 16, he was driving, tractor trailers to the downtown LA. It's on 7th Street in the market. He was a truck driver. Then he became a farmer. He became a farm labor contractor. And during my formative years, I began working in the fields when I was 5 years of age. And I worked from Calexico to Stockton in the Delta, picking tomatoes and cucumbers and strawberries in Oxnard, drove tractors, drove trucks. So he taught us the importance of getting up early and working. He'd complain, "Dad, why do we have to get up so early?" And his response was, "It's the early bird who catches the worm." But he gave us he nurtured in us a desire to work hard. All of my siblings are all hard workers. So I got that from my mom and dad. My mother also loved to read, and I fell in love with reading when I was a child. Again, we used to have 6 in a bedroom at times. And so I didn't know what it was like to live in a home without noise until after I left home. But where I would find my solace would be when all my brothers and sisters were out playing, I would go up to the room and I'd read. And I've loved reading. And so that's how it started. And then when I went to community college and I met this Ray Reyes. He helped me to believe in myself and said, "Hey, your job is to serve your people and to develop the skills and go serve." And so it just evolved over time. But my first goal was to play second base for the LA Dodgers, but I couldn't hit a curveball. So I figured, okay, now what am I going to do? And I tell you, when you work in Calexico, you have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. You're in the fields by 5, and you're just waiting for enough sunlight to shine on the fruit before you start work. By 10:30 in the morning, it's 120 degrees. Yeah. And so when you do that, people say, "Wow, you're a judge, and this is very difficult." I said, "No, picking tomatoes in Calexico is difficult. I'm sitting in an air-conditioned building. This is a piece of cake." But through all those experiences, I just enjoyed reading. I enjoyed people. And the way I explained how I ended up going to law school. It was through that interaction with my friend Sam Rios that I met those law students. And when they explained to me what they were doing, I said, "Well, this is a perfect fit for me because I enjoy studying. I enjoy reading. And I wanted to be of service. I'm definitely not a mechanic. I pick up a hammer or a saw, my wife panics. She says, "Put it down, step away, take a deep breath." I've always gravitated towards music, towards reading, towards writing. that's how I evolved. But my mom and dad, and then people along the way, Ray Reyes and Sam Rios, and other friends who had similar values, and so that's how it happened. But being of service to others as a lawyer has been very meaningful for me, and I've always enjoyed it. So,
wow, yeah. I really appreciate you mentioning, what the discipline and the spirituality your mom taught you, and the sense of trabajo or work that your dad taught you, and then that somehow the spirit of wanting to learn or read, or that many of us have. And I think that many times when people see people's success, they don't recognize, because I'm sure that also you working in the fields, having to get up so early in the morning and dealing with the sacrificio of being in 110, 115 degrees weather, and I'm sure your hands got all jacked up, and just the sacrifice of having to do that gave you a tremendous amount of consciousness of what people go through. The people, and you worked in the Valley, you worked there in Bakersfield, you worked and so you, I'm sure, encountered in not only your lawyership, but your judgeship as well, people who had that very same experience. And what we find many times in systems is there's judges and lawyers that are making determinations on what should go on in someone's life without understanding, without feeling, the experiences of what the people have gone through. Talk to us a little bit about that and how that served you as a lawyer and then as a judge.
I'll give you a real concrete example of how that came into play. I was sitting as a judge in the arraignment calendar, where persons are charged with criminal offenses and they have to enter a plea of guilty or not guilty. And it's a pretty heavy calendar, maybe 150 people. I have to go through the calendar in about 3 hours. And so there's no time to waste. We have probation officers talking to some of the clients and making them offers, and we have attorneys in the courtroom advising clients to take pleas. So I'm going through my calendar, and we're about 10 minutes into the calendar, I call a case of a woman, Mexicana, maybe in her mid-40s, who is charged with a crime of domestic violence. As I look up, I take a look at her, and she was a woman working in the fields, and she had no criminal record. And reading her body language and looking at her demeanor, she did not belong there. And as I asked her some questions, I noticed in the back of the courtroom, there were family members waving their hands, trying to get my attention. So I asked the woman what the charges were. And she had a very difficult time just responding without breaking into tears. And I realized she doesn't belong here. So I know that any person who comes to the United States without papers and pleads guilty to any crime of domestic violence, that undermines their chances of immigrating. So I said to the probation officer, district attorney, I said, this young lady does not belong in custody. I said, so what we're going to do is she's going to enter a plea of not guilty. I'm going to release her from custody today based on her own reconnaissance. And I'm going to make sure that she's appointed an attorney. And we'll see her down the road. And the reason I was able to approach the problem the way that I did is because when I was working in the fields, this would have been a woman working right next to me. And I know that she was not a criminal. There was some dispute that took place between her and her significant other. But looking at her demeanor and the way that she responded to my questions as something, she was somebody who did not belong in custody. And I did not want her to suffer adverse consequences by entering a plea of guilty to a domestic violence charge. And so that was just one example. I just looked at her and said, I know her. She's part of my experience. So, yeah. And then, again, when I would have clients coming in front of me, let's say from Mexico, they don't have their papers, they're charged with domestic violence cases, I would say, wait a minute. This person, I'd ask, do you have family? Yes, I got some kids, and I've been here in the United States, 14 years. And I look at the charges, and I say, counsel, let's go back into chambers. And we go back into chambers, and I say, hey, this person is charged with a minor offense. He has a family. He has an investment in the community, investment in the lives of his children. And so we're not going to derail. We're going to work something out whereby he's held accountable. but in a way that's not going to devastate him or his family. And I was able to do that because, I worked side by side with these people from Calexico to Stockton to Oxnard. And so it was pretty simple.
Well, I think it was simple for you because you had a sense of consciousness. And I think that, your mom instilled in you a sense of spirituality that allowed you to, be compassionate with people. And your dad, took you in those fields so you could, really understand what it was to, what the burden is of every day, having to work in those fields and then go home and raise kids. And obviously, the regular trials and tribulations of parenting and trying to raise kids and trying to live in this society, especially when you don't have papers, brings about tension, brings about, certain things. And I think that all that experience then is tremendously valuable, for you, because people come before you and you change their lives. You can change their lives. You can, in essence, destroy their lives, or you can enhance their lives. And I think, what's impressed me in the times that I've, been with you and the times I've talked with you and we've had dialogue about, situations and people and hombres and different things like that, is there's a sense of compassion and there's a sense of honor in your life and in the work that you've done. You've also shared with me that, which I thought was unusual, that you as a judge had a mission statement or a vision statement or something like that guided your work. Can you talk about that and share a little bit about that?
Well, sure. With respect to the mission statements, again, my wife, Sandra Serrano, was the president of Bakersfield College for about 7 years. And you can imagine, as the president of a community college, she has to interact with leaders in the community, in finance, in agriculture, in construction, in healthcare. And besides being the president of the community college, she was also a board member of various hospitals. Dignity Health, she sat on the national board in San Francisco. She was the president of the board of directors for both Mercy Hospital and Memorial Hospital. And I would accompany her to conferences as it relates to her work with the hospitals. And if you understand a hospital, they operate 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. When they make mistakes, people die. And so I took that to heart and I studied the processes, and I decided that I wanted to have a mission statement that defined my role, both as a lawyer and as a judge. With respect to the mission statement for my courtroom, and again, I think I'm the only judge in the state of California who has a mission statement, but it meant something to me. So I had it framed in my courtroom. And it reads, "The courtroom of Judge Tafoya is a public forum maintained to resolve legal disputes. The courtroom staff, beginning with the judge, shall maintain a professional environment dedicated to resolving legal disputes in a timely manner. In order to promote professionalism, the court staff shall maintain consistent hours, treat all members of the public with courtesy and respect, and strive to apply the most current law consistently and fairly to all litigants." So when you came into my courtroom, all you have to do is read the mission statement. So what I'm saying here, as a judge, you come to my courtroom, you show up on time, starting with the judge. If my calendar started at 8:30, I started at 8:30. With respect to applying the most current law, as a judge, I was constantly reading the law. We have our daily journal newspaper that publishes cases 5 days a week throughout California and the 9th District of Court of Appeals and the U.S. Supreme Court. I always read cases that were relevant to me in the areas that I covered: criminal law, probate law, family law. I would read the cases. I would summarize the cases. I'd put them on a Rolodex. So when I'm confronted with a particular issue, I may not remember the case, but I remember the factual situation. We go into recess. I go into my chambers. I go to my Rolodex. I find the case. I read the case. I look at the facts. I look at the issue before the court, the ruling and the rationale. So I did that through my entire career as a judge. And as a lawyer, I did the same thing. I read every case dealing with family law for the 24 years that I was on the bench, and I summarized all those cases, put them in my Rolodex. When I was in the courtroom practicing as a lawyer, when I was a judge, I always had my evidence code, my family law code, my criminal code with me at all times. Where you have other attorneys gossiping, talking about baseball or the Super Bowl or what they did last night, I would sit in the jury box by myself, and I'd be reading the law, because that was my obligation, both as a lawyer and as a judge. It was a guide for me and for my staff. So again, I want to be professional. I want to show respect. If I had a problem with the lawyer because he's not showing up late or she's not filing briefs in a timely manner, I take her back into my chambers, close the door, and we have a discussion. I would not berate anybody in public. That's not what a judge should do. And I was constantly aware of my role as a judge, both on the bench and off the bench, that I'm a role model and I'm a leader in the community just by the mere fact of my position. And so I always had to conduct myself accordingly. And so that's what I did. In my courtroom, for example, I used to have a rack, and I would have the employment office send me flyers of all job opportunities in the area. And on a daily basis, I would announce when I started my session that they're going to be hiring at Home Depot. And starting pay is, $15.75 an hour. This is the number that you need to call, or this is the flyer, go apply. For those of you having a difficult time paying your fines, let's do this. I'm going to refer you to this job fair. You get a job, we'll continue the matter 90 days. You come back and you show me that you're working full time, I'll reduce your fine by half. That thought it was a big deal. To me, it wasn't a big deal at all because they weren't paying the fine to begin with. So, but they didn't know that, Or when people would appear, I have young folks who would appear in front of me and clearly intelligent. They'd say, well, I said, why aren't you in college? Well, I'm having a difficult time filling out the application form. I said, I'll tell you what we're going to do. And I had the phone number to the community college right there on my cell phone. I'd call from the bench and said, I'm going to be sending Jerry Teo. He'll be over at your office at about 11 o'clock. I want you to enroll him into the next semester classes. And I'll continue in a matter of 2 weeks. And if you come back showing me that you've enrolled at Bakersfield College, then I'm going to give you a break. And I interacted with the employment office, with the schools, with a number of agencies to move people along. But using my judicial power and my legal skills in a way that resolves problems. That's always been my desire, to solve problems.
Yeah. As you're talking, it reminded me of, when my mom would tell us que mijo, estamos aquí para servir la gente. We're here to serve people. And regardless of the titles that we carry or the roles that we play, really our role is to help others. And I think, again, coming back to your upbringing and what you were taught in your familia, that sense of serving others. And because, you're right. As a judge, you didn't need to do all that. It's not required for you to collect your paycheck and do everything. But in order to fulfill the wishes of your family and the values that you were raised with, you chose. You chose to include all of those things in really helping people. And I don't think that many times judges are seen as necessarily helpers. You may get a little deal once in a while, but more than that, I don't see that. That's not kind of the perception of what we see in judges. And I think that it must have been difficult for you as well, because we recognize the racism and oppression and discrimination also that exists in having especially immigrant population arrested or fined or whatever, based on someone else's unconscious bias or conscious bias. And then they come to you before a judge. How did you deal with that? And how did that come into play? You recognizing that, I'm sure that some of the charges that were put before some of these people were maybe unjust or maybe not appropriate. What did you do with that?
Every person who appeared in front of me was important. And their particular issue deserved my attention. I'm a person who believes that you live out your values as opposed to just pronouncing your values in public. I try and live them out. I always made a record. Everything I did is on the record. When I render decisions like in small claims matters, I would write written decisions to let everybody know this is how I ruled and this is why I ruled. And I don't concern myself with what other people think. I would, people say, well, you're wrong, and I'm going to take you up an appeal. I said, well, that's fine. I'll give you the address to the appellate court. And you're not entitled to a decision of your choosing, but you're entitled to a well-reasoned decision. And that I will provide you. And I'll tell you why I'm ruling the way that I am and the reasons behind that. But, every individual who came before me has a gift. Like you said, their lives are sacred. They're all deserving of due consideration. I would make a decision and I would let it go. In terms of compassion, again, I've been blessed from day one. And to me, the most genuine way of expressing gratitude is by giving back. And so that's why being of service is really just a genuine expression of gratitude for all the blessings that I've enjoyed. I would just focus on the issue before me, and I wouldn't really delve into whether this was a racist comment. I'd look at the evidence. Let's say you have a preliminary hearing, you have a police officer testifying, and the defendant shouts out that, he was calling me a filthy name, a derogatory name, referring to my race or something. And I would note it, and I would listen very, very closely to the officer's testimony and see whether it lines up or it's consistent with the evidence that's presented. And if I formulated the opinion that the officer is being less than truthful, then I ruled accordingly. And I would make my findings on the record. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just, like I said, every case is different. Every case is deserving of my full attention. Every case, it requires that I do the utmost to render justice. And that's what I did. I call them as I see them. And if people agree, fine. If not, that's okay too. But with me, you'll know why I ruled the way that I did. Mm-hmm. That to me is what is important.
Right. I appreciate, your candor with that. But I really want to focus on one thing. I haven't seen this common among judges. And you said that everyone that comes before me is sacred. That is so significant and so profound. If you really see everyone coming before you as sacred, that already grounds things in a certain way. You can also see the opposite. Everyone that comes before me is already a criminal. They're already, some unconscious bias can focus that. And so I really want to acknowledge, I appreciate your candor and your sense of fair judgment, but I really, really want to lift up the spirit and your spirituality and your values and your sense of honor in the work that you've done all these years. And, you will never know. You will never know the profound effect that you've had on so many people in being fair, in being compassionate, in being supportive, of their life journey and them coming before you. And why before you and not another judge? I really believe that Creator and ancestors have a way, of blessing people, even in the criminal justice system, of having them come before somebody that has compassion, that has a sense of, if you will, acknowledgement and conocimiento of where they've come from, but someone that's fair and really wants their life to be better, And so, I want to appreciate you for that and just for your sacrifice in everything you've done.
Jerry, just one thing. Again, there's a wonderful book called The Spirituality of Imperfection, and that we human beings are imperfect by design. When I was handling cases on a regular basis, I have drug addicts, heroin addicts, alcoholics, abusers who appear in front of me. So, for example, someone is charged with driving under the influence. This is the third offense in the last 4 years. And they're looking for a break. They're looking for some mercy. I said, okay, well, have you ever attended Alcoholics Anonymous? Oh, yes, Judge. I've attended well over 100, really. Well, when was the last time you attended a 12-step program? Last week. It's okay. Why don't you tell me what the first 4 steps are of the 12-step program? And they go, oh, well, Judge, no, I can't repeat them, but I do know what they are. As a son, don't come into this courtroom and lie to me. If you say that you participated in 12 steps, but you can't tell me the first 4 steps, we have a problem. So I would have the 12 steps printout on the bench. I'd give it to my bailiff. I'd give it to that person. I'd sit him in the jury box saying, Mr. Bailiff, that gentleman cannot leave the courtroom. And I'd have them go through 12 steps. And then about 30 minutes later, I called them back. And I says, okay, read the first 4 steps. And we discussed the steps. And I say, okay, don't come into my courtroom and tell me something that's not true, that you're showing disrespect to this court. And here's what we're going to do. And then I would go ahead and continue the matter out. And then I'd say, okay, I want you to do the following. When you come back, we will revisit the issue. I don't know if you're familiar with Gail Gibran, the prophet.
Yeah.
He wrote a wonderful chapter on Speak to Us of Children. I printed out the poem. I had that in my courtroom framed. So when I would have parents litigating custody or attorneys fighting over custody, and they were losing their direction and they were insulting one another, I said, you know what, time out, everybody. I want you to go back to the back of my courtroom. I want you to read Gail Gibran's poem on Speaking to Us of Children. Then we're going to come back in about 15 minutes and then we'll reconvene. To let them know that, hey, folks, mom, dad, these are not your kids. They don't belong to you. They come through you. You feed them, you clothe them, you make sure their homework is done. But at the end of the day, they say goodbye because they belong in the world of tomorrow. And we can't go there, not even our wildest dreams. But our job is to prepare them. And so these statements that you're making about the mother of your children, or ma'am, the statements you're making about the father of your children, that's inappropriate. Let's get focused on what is really important, which is the best interest of the children. So I would use those as tools to help them just refocus. So it's either alcoholism, domestic violence, the anger that emanates from a divorce, and just to help people, guide people from point A to point B in a good way, in a healthy way.
Well, you know, that really points to to the increased role that you took on as a maestro, as a teacher, and really as a service provider in terms of guiding them to some healing. Because as you know, as you said, all of us have our own cargas, have our own issues. I mean, those of us that work on our issues, that work on our problems, that work on our trauma that we have can do better. But there are some of us that don't and continue repeating those. And that can be harmful to communities, as you say, DUI, domestic violence, child, all those things can hurt others. And so you become also very much a protector of children, a protector of families, a protector of the community. And, what a wonderful way that you did that. And I think that truly is our role too. How do we make people accountable, and how do we get them the healing that they need before they hurt themselves or hurt someone else? Amazing, just the breadth of work that you've been able to encompass, in your life. I know that you so-called retired a number of years ago, and now you're in a different phase in your life, and your sacred purpose have taken you to another role. I wonder if you can talk about your life now and what you find yourself doing, and what's the focus of your life now.
Well, and again, I didn't retire as much as I transitioned from one stage of my life to another. And when I was practicing law, and then as a judge, or somebody asked me one time, what's your greatest accomplishment that you achieved up to this point in your life? And I said, more than anything, it's being able to balance my role as a man and trying to develop my spiritual, emotional, physical, and mental balance, focusing on my music, being a husband and nurturing the marital relationship, being a father, and giving time to my children, because there's nothing more important than the time you give to your kids, making sure that they do their homework and making sure that I attend their soccer games and their programs at school and give them the guidance. Being a good son to my parents and a good son-in-law to my in-laws, being a good brother and an uncle. I was a lawyer representing clients and litigating on a regular basis. I was a businessman. When I ran my practice, it was, I had to generate maybe $30,000 every 30 days just to keep the doors open. Pay my staff and to pay my insurance and my mortgage and those sorts of things. Also, I was a community activist, a community leader, and I was a president of the La Raza Lawyers Association. I was the president of our Kern County Bar Association. I organized writing contests for high school students. I was an alumni of the Hastings College of Law for about 11 years. I worked in the Kern Probation Department. So I was doing all these different things. And now that I've transitioned I'm using the same energy, but I'm directing it towards a more simplified but meaningful life. Now it's my wife who has health issues, and I take care of my wife. I take care of my mother-in-law, who will be 99 in November. So now my focus is cooking and cleaning and shopping and get my sweetheart and my suegra to their hair appointments and their nail appointments and, sitting down with them and watching the Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy and finding meaning in being able to make some fideo, some sopa de arroz that's nice and fluffy, to, take them out to a dinner and just enjoy each day. I enjoy sitting in my garden, and I'm reading constantly. I'm given this election coming up. I'm listening to the book Fear by Bob Woodward on Donald Trump. I'm reading an excellent book right now called Solito by Javier Zamora. A beautiful story, a true story of a young boy from El Salvador, 9 years of age, traveled by himself to reunite with his parents in California. He ends up going to Harvard, and a beautiful story. I highly recommend it. So I'm writing, I continue to write articles to the newspaper on issues like immigration reform, you name it. So I contribute in that way. And again, I'm going back to my music, which is something that I really enjoy doing. One of the things I do, Jerry, for the last 31 years, I've been maintaining a journal. Okay. And for the last 28 years, I've made entries every day. And I use my journal as my compass. And so what I do at the beginning of every year, on January 1, as I'm watching the Rose Bowl parade, I sit down and I articulate in writing the values that I choose to live by. So for this year, 2024, I wrote, my focus in life is going to be on how I do something, not what I do. It's how I approach what I do. I'm going to focus, as always, on balance, spiritual, emotional, physical, and mental balance. I'm going to remain present in the moment. I want to get away from multitasking and focus on the here and now. And I'm going to accept life as it is and do not resist. So then I write down a list of categories that I will utilize, I will measure. And then at the end of the year, from December 26th to December 31st, I go through every day of my life to measure to see whether or not my behavior aligns with my values. So the categories would be PM, prayer and meditation. 2, exercise. 3, my centering practice. AOK, acts of kindness. TWF, time with family. Then the audiobooks that I've listened to, books that I've read, trips I've taken to Ventura, San Jose, Oceanside, how my music, my swimming pool, my stretch bands. And so what I do is I measure my behavior, I jot it down and see whether it aligns with my values. And I use that as a compass. I've been doing that for years. And that has helped me to maintain my sense of balance when I'm trying to juggle all these different activities. And so I'm a strong believer in using a journal as a tool to navigate the complexities of life in a way that is enjoyable and meaningful. A little crazy, but that's what I do.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing that that you have that discipline to be able to do that. I had the blessing of sitting with you in the Retiro this weekend there in Jolon. You're one of the elders in that circle. And as we were sitting in that circle, there was a number of younger men, probably in their 30s or 40s, that are married and struggling with their relationships and trying to find their balance. And then you shared a very simple statement, but a very profound statement that touched them all. You said love is a choice. You said kindness is a choice. And you went on to articulate, that sometimes in your relationships, things are a struggle and you have to sacrifice and they're not what you thought they were. And sometimes, you get challenged by your spouse because of the way they are or because of their health issues. And then you have a choice how to approach that. With resentimiento, with frustration, or with love. And that was so impactful, not only to me, but to so many of the men. And when we closed out the circle, they shared that with you. They shared how your words, talking about your life, your relationship with your wife, and your choice, choosing love made such a powerful impact on them. I wonder if you can expound on that a little bit, because that was such a beautiful moment and teaching for so many.
In order to answer the question, allow me to expand. As a judge, I am responsible for performing many tasks, but one of the most enjoyable tasks for me is to perform weddings. And I perform weddings mostly for family and friends. And my role as a judge is to help the couple understand the nature of marital love. And I start off by defining marital love, which the definition can be found in Family Law Code Section 720, that reads, husband and wife contract toward each other obligations of mutual respect, fidelity, and support. So in its most basic sense, a marriage is nothing more and nothing less than a decision, a choice, a contract made between husband and wife to be bound for the rest of their lives to an agreement that you will act towards one another with respect, fidelity, and support during good times and not so good times, for richer or poorer, and through sickness and in good health. The couple promise to treat one another with respect, to be loyal to the other, and support one another financially, emotionally, spiritually, and in all ways that one human being can lend support and care to another. So because marriage vows are based on love that is meant to endure the passage of time, it is my belief that love's essence is not limited to an emotion or a feeling or a sentiment, but at its core, marital love is a conscious choice. And within the context of marriage, marital love is a genuine promise by each spouse to the other to foster the well-being of the other. So to illustrate the point, what I do, I explain to a couple that, today your feelings towards one another are intense as they should be. But now let's imagine it's 3 years down the road and it's Sunday night and husband arrives home from work tired but wanting to go out and blow off some steam. He feels he needs a break from the pressures of work. So as he walks in the door to his home, the phone rings and his good friend calls him and says, "Hey, Jerry, where are you, man? We're watching a Sunday night football. Everybody's here. We got pizza. We've got beer. We got chicken wings. It's the Raiders versus the Dallas Cowboys. And we've all decided that we can't get this party going unless you are here." So Jerry's excited as can be. He can hear in the background the music going and the people are laughing. And he's thinking, man, I'm ready to go. But as he's ready to make the decision to go, he turns to his left, and on the couch is his wife. And she's laid out, practically dead to the world. She has the flu, a fever of 101 degrees, and is barely able to move. But with the greatest effort, being the beautiful woman that she is, she coughs and she says, honey, you go ahead and have a good time. You enjoy your time with your friends and family. I'll be okay. Cough, cough. So Jerry has a decision to make. Now, we all know where he wants to go, but he has to decide his priorities. What is truly important in his life? So it is at this very moment that love presents itself, not in a warm and lovable and enduring feeling, but it is manifested in the form of a test. A choice must be made. Remember that love is a choice and not an emotion. And that's the point. In a marriage, at the end of the day, you make a conscious choice. You make an agreement. And you have to give palabra. You have to back up your choice through good times and bad, through sickness and health, till death do you part. And in the process, love grows. And through the passage of time, it becomes much easier. But in that process, once you make that commitment to marriage, you abandon yourself to that commitment. Love begins to grow. You see it. You begin to experience a whole different dimension. It's a much more profound. It's a deep marriage. And now there's no way I can see myself living without my wife. And we are the best of friends. But we start from the premise that we're both crazy. But that's okay. That's okay. She's a Giant fan. I'm a Dodger fan. God, can you imagine that?
Oh, my God.
But we make it work. But it's acceptance. And again, you don't resist it. That's what Jose taught me. When you get to stage 4, get to balance. The inner nature of man is identical to the nature of the universe. Life has its own rhythm, it's cyclical and circular. And so what you want to do is get into that rhythm. Once you do that, it's like, oh, okay. And there'll be sunny days and there'll be cloudy days. Okay. So what? You say, well, I want to watch a Dodger game, but my suegra says she wants to watch Jeopardy. I said, okay, I'll watch Jeopardy. I'll catch her. I'll go I'll get a rerun. I'll tape the game. It's no big deal. You don't take yourself seriously. You just. So I tell people, remember rule number 7: don't take yourself so seriously. And I learned all that through the journey that I followed, following the advice of El Maestro Jose Montoya.
You make it sound very simple, but I know it's taken a lot of work. And I know it's taken a lot of sacrificio. Back to when you were in the fields. Back to when your mom says, turn off the TV, we're going to say the rosary. Back to, struggling with exams to get through law school. The very many things. And I know we didn't have time to talk about this, and I'm sure, but I'm sure this exists as a, Chicano, Latino man in your profession. I'm sure you had many obstacles and many challenges, in maintaining your integrity there, but you didn't give up, and you maintained your values. And what a beautiful example of un hombre noble, that now being married to your wife for so many years and taking care of your suegra too. What an example. What an example, of that sense of, in Cloque Nahuac, you're in a connected sacredness, So, Judge, I'll call you Judge, Roberto, compadre, I just want to honor you.
Oh.
And thank you for being such a beautiful example to us of how to be and how to live, And I wonder, as we close today, if you can offer, you've already offered so much wisdom already, but if there's anything that you'd like to offer as counsel or as advice or anything for that next generation to help them on their path, I want to give you that opportunity before we close today.
I'll basically summarize, again, what Jose Montoya taught me. You pursue knowledge. Knowledge brings wisdom. Wisdom brings strength. And strength brings balance in your life. You accept life on its own term. Do not resist. In my chambers, as a judge, I had the 4 agreements displayed, the 4 rules. Be impeccable with your word. Take nothing personally. Very important. Let the ego go. Be open to life and always do your best. And I'm a strong believer in maintaining a journal. Use your journal as a compass. State your values. Examine your behavior, and then on a regular basis, at least once a year, you compare your conduct with your values and see whether they align. And if they don't, then you know where your work is. And so that would be my advice. And if anybody wants to know more about journaling, then perhaps they can send me an email, and I'll share with them. But journaling is important.
Well, thank you, brother. We really want to appreciate your time and your willingness to share, and there's so much more there, but I just, really want to appreciate you and all you've done and the many, many people that you've touched over the years. And you being one of the elders in our circle and you being one of the examples in our circle, we're very honored and proud to be connected with you that way. And, and as you listen today, I really want to just challenge the audience to really take into heart what our brother has shared, the many things that he shared, but that sense of love and compassion as being a choice, but you doing your work, and whether it's journaling or reflection or however you do it, incorporate your own process to be able to guide you and to reflect on how well you're doing with that, and then do the work. And there are people like Robert Tafoya that are out there that can offer you counsel or advice or or maybe guide you along the way. And what a blessing to be able to sit and hear the wonderful words and wisdom of Robert Tafoya. And, I really just want to thank all of you for the time that you've spent with us. Take these teachings and put them into practice, and then share them with others, because it really is about us, finding peace and wholeness and balance and sacredness in everything we do. Well, I want to thank you all for listening. Thank you for who you are, and go out and bless somebody in a good way. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day. Glasukamani.
For more information about Healing Generations and the Healing Generations Institute, visit nationalcompadresnetwork.org and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with our new releases.